Today we are taking a look at Oath and how to play Oath. Now this is a big game and there are a lot of things that the players can do. You either start as the Chancellor ruling this land, or you start as one of the exiles, trying to take over the Chancellor's spot and eventually rule the land. This is a game of history and power shifting between the players. In this video here, I am going to show you how to set up your first game and what you can do during your turn. First thing we need to do during setup is to roll out the big map and put it in the center of the table. Now we need to play some cards. On the cradle side, we start by putting the plains card faced up. Under provinces, we put the mountain card faced up. And under hinterland, we put the rocky coast, again faced up. The remaining 5 sides are then filled with face down sites, starting with the plains, then going to the mountains, and lastly under rocky coast. Next to each of the 3 sides, we also need to put 1 Denson cards and some cards face down on the discard pile spot. In this case, we have longbows next to the plains and 3 face down cards. Next to the mountain, we put Taming Charm faced up. And in the discard pile, we have 3 face down cards. But on this side, we also have an artifact. This here is the Ivory Eye. This is put face down next to the site. And lastly, we have the Rocky Coast. Next to the Rocky Coast, we have the Elders. And here we have 5 face down cards in the discard pile. The rest of the relics are put face down where it says relics on the map. And the same goes for the rest of the dense cards. These now becomes the world deck. Then we need to put 3 favor tokens in each of the banks out on the map. We need to put a track marker on the first spot on the round track. This is indicated by a star. And then we also need to put this token here on the starting field on the vision draw track. Again, the first spot is indicated by a star. Next to the map, we have the shared bank with all the favor tokens, the secrets and dice and so on. I will tell you more about these in a bit. Now let's set up the Chancellor's board. First we start by taking the board of the Chancellor, but also taking the Oathkeeper token and put above the Chancellor title. We now need to take the Chancellor's warbands. We need to put 17 next to the board, while we put 3 on the board itself. 2 warbands goes out on the plains along with the purple pawn. We also put 1 warband on the mountains and the last one on the rocky coast. We now need to put a track marker on the supply track all the way over where there's a little star. Need to take 2 favor tokens and 1 secret token. Whoever is the Chancellor also get an Imperial Regularity board that is put beneath their main board. Here we should have 4 starting relics. These ones should be the Obsidian Cage, the Cracked Horn, the Whistle, and lastly the Ring of Devotion. And you can put these artifacts in any order you would like to on this board. Next to the Chancellor's board, we also have the Grand Scepter. This is put face up next to the board. And we also have a starting advisor. The starting advisor for the Chancellor is the Forest Path. This is put face down next to the board to the right. When we're done with the Chancellor, we need to set up the rest of the players. And in the starting game, we have the color yellow, the player color blue, and also the player color red. Now each player needs to collect their warbands. They should put 11 next to their board and 3 on their board. They should take 1 secret token and 1 favor token. Then, just like the Chancellor, they need to put their token on the starting spot on the supply track. Each player will also get a starting advisor. The yellow player should get a small favor. The red player gets animal playmates. And the blue player gets day savers. Again, these are put face down to the right of their board, where it says advisors. But now each player also needs to put out their pawn. The blue player puts their pawn on the mountains, and the red player also put their pawn on the mountains, but the yellow player puts their pawn on the rocky coast. So this here is the starting setup, as I said. And what I mean by that is when you open this game for the first time, you will have these cards in your unopened decks. And you simply follow these cards step by step. How you place out what card, where you place it out, because it is quite important that this game starts this way so you later can follow the playbook. Otherwise it will be quite confusing for you during your first game. So don't just rip this open and shuffle it, because then you have made a mess. So on this map we have 3 different regions. We have the cradle to the left, we have the provinces in the middle, and hinterland to the far right. Each of these regions have their different sides beneath them. The cradle only have 2 sides, while provinces and hinterland have 3 sides. And you can rule these sides if you have any of your war bands out on the sides. This means that at the beginning of this game, whoever is the Chancellor rules 3 sides, as they have their war bands out on 3 different sides. If whoever plays the Chancellor manage to keep their title to the end of the game, they will win the game. But they actually have a chance of winning the game from round 5 up to 8 as well. Because at the start of round number 5, they get to roll a 6-sided die. And if they manage to get a 6, as stated on the round track, they win. But in round number 6, they get to roll again, and if they get 5, they win. Lastly, in round number 7, they get to roll one more time, and if they get 3, they win the game. If they don't manage to get any of these results, well, the game ends as normal after round number 8. But how do you win if you are an exile? Well, in this case, you would need to take over the throne from the Chancellor himself. And now, all of a sudden, instead of being an exile, you are now an Oath Keeper. And during your next wake phase, you get to flip this over to become Ursuper. If you manage to keep this title to the wake phase, well then you win the game. And during this game, you get this title from ruling more sides than the Chancellor. But this changes from game to game, because we have these different conditions on what it takes to become the Chancellor. And depending on which game you are playing, well, you can get the title in different ways. But there is actually one more way for the exiles to win the game. Because in this deck, we have something that is called visions. These visions will give you a possibility to win the game in another way than just taking the title. So now we know what we need to do to win the game. But how do we reach that goal? Well, during your turn, you go through 3 different steps. It's the wake step, it's the act step, and then it is the rest step. The wake step is only done by the one that are exiles, meaning that the Chancellor does not do this step. And this is where we check if we have this Oath Keeper token. If we have it on the board already, we now flip it over to the other side, and we put that faced up. But if we already have Ursuper side faced up, well, congratulations, then you are the winner of the game. But as we have just started, well, we do not have that yet, so nothing happens. But if you are an exile and if you have any card that says wake on them and it has an action, well, now is the time to use that card. And you can use these cards no matter if you are an exile or not. So that was the wake phase. Quite easy, right? Check your board, see if you have won the game or not. Use any cards if you have them, or if you want to use them. Now we move into step number 2 of a player's turn. And this is the act phase. And this is definitely the biggest phase in this whole game. You can do many different actions. Before we take a look at the different actions, we just need to get 2 things straight. Because you can use the powers on your cards on the sites that your pawn is. But also all the cards that you rule, whether they are at remote locations or if they are your advisors. But if the action says at your site, your pawn needs to be at the site where you want to do the action. So basically, if you're doing actions on your board, you are doing actions where your pawn is located. You have 6 base actions, and you can do these actions in any order you would like to. But besides those actions, you also have some minor actions. And besides those minor actions, you also have actions that are made possible from any cards on your side or advisors and so on. There are many things a player can do in this game. But let's take a look at the first main action. This is the search action. To do the search action, you simply draw 3 cards. And you can draw 3 cards from the world deck, meaning the one down here, or from the discard pile in the region where you are at. When you have drawn 3 cards, you need to pick one you would like to keep and then discard 2. And you need to discard the cards to the region on your left where you have your pawn. Meaning that if you have your pawn in the province, for example, you need to discard the cards in the hinterlands. When you search, it will cost you supply. And depending on where you drew the cards, it will cost you different amounts of supply. If you drew from the discard pile, it will always cost you 2 supply, as stated next to the discard pile. But if you drew from the world deck, it will cost you as much supply as stated on the row above. Meaning that if this tile is over here, it will cost you 4 supply. But if it is here, it will cost you 3, and if it's in the starting spot, it will only cost you 2. Once you have drawn the card that you wanted and you have paid the amount of supply you need to pay, you also get to play the card. And depending on what the card says, different things will of course happen. This one here, for example, you will gain 4 supply. And you can play them either on your advisors, you can play them out on your sides, or you can discard them. But some cards have some symbols on them. If they have a little symbol of a meeple, it can only be played as an advisor. But if it has a symbol of a little tree, it can be played out on one of the sites where you are. When you play a card next to a site, you need to mind the capacity of that site. In this case, the mountain can only have 2 cards next to it. If you choose to draw from the world deck and you get a vision, well then you would need to stop drawing cards, and you are not allowed to draw any more cards during this turn. If you are an exile, you now take this card and you put it face up on your player board, where it says Revealed Vision. We also need to move the vision token up 1 step above the world deck. If you are not an exile, you can still take this vision card and play it as a face down advisor, but it is only exiles that can play it as a vision on their board. If you should draw another vision during the game, you simply discard the old one and place out the new one. Besides search, you can also choose to muster. To do this, you take 1 favor and you put it on an empty card on your location. Empty meaning that there cannot be any other favors or secrets already. If you do this, 2 warbands from the supply next to your board and now put them on your board. Ready to use. This action will however cost you 1 supply. Next action is to trade for either favor or secrets out on a site where you're at. Again, the card that you trade with needs to be empty, meaning there cannot be any favors or secrets on it. If you trade in for some favors, you need to place 1 secret on the card you would like to trade with. And then you get 1 favor. But if the suit of this card matches any of your advisory suit, you get to take 1 more favor from that bank. If you don't want to have favors, you can also choose to trade for secrets instead. In that case, you need to put 2 favors on a card that you would like to trade with, and then you get 1 secret for each advisory that you have matching the suit of the card that you are trading with. In this case here, this player gets 1 secret. And then we have the recover action, because you can recover 1 relic at the site where you are, meaning where your pawn is located. To recover a face down relic, you might have to pay some favors, and you can see that at the bottom right corner on the site where you're at. So here, for example, we would need to pay 2 favors to the shared bank for recovering this card to the faced up side again. While other sites like this one here will have you throw away secrets instead. And other, like the narrow pass here, will have you giving a certain amount of favors to a certain bank. In this case, you would need to pay 3 favors to the arcane bank to be able to recover this relic. When you have recovered a relic, you get to take that relic and put it next to your board. And now in the future you can use this relic. And you can have any amount of relics as you wish. To use the recover action will cost you 1 supply. And then we have the campaign action. Now this action is the biggest action that you will do in this game. Here you will be able to basically go to war with any other player or bandit, which is kind of like a neutral player in this game, that is located on your site. To start a campaign you will need to pay 2 supply. You first need to choose a defender. And this can be any other player who rules your site. Meaning that they have a pawn or a warband on the site where your pawn is located. And you can declare any number of targets out on the map, meaning the full map, not just the site that you're at. But you need to target the defenders on your site if they rule it, meaning that they have any number of warbands on them. But you can also attack any relics they hold if their pawn is at your site, and their pawn and favor if their pawn is at your site. Before we calculate our attack and defense die, we need to say if we want to use any battle plans. These are basically cards that will give us extra die during this battle. Once we have said if we want to use them or not, we need to see how many die we get to use. Each target out on the map now needs to add up their defense die. Each targeted unit now gets to count up their defend dice. The basic amount of dice can be found in the top right corner of your player board. But don't forget any extra dice that you might get from your advisors, but also from your relics. Once we know how many die we get to roll, we need to count the amount of shields. The ×2 mean that the amount of shields that we have rolled is doubled. Meaning that here we have 6 shields, and with the ×2 it becomes 12. We also need to count the amount of warbands on the sites that we have target, and if there's any bandits they will add 1 per site. And then we need to count any warbands that are on the defender's board, if their pawn was at your side or at the site you targeted. Now the attacker gets to collect as many attack die as they have warbands on their board, but also add up any die if they have any battle plans. Once the defender have rolled, it's time for the attacker to roll their die. Any 2 hollow sword counts as 1 sword. Any skull will instantly kill a warband out on the map. And every 1 sword will of course count as 1 sword. If you have only rolled a single hollow sword, we do not count that one at all. If you have more swords than the defender have shields, well then you are victorious. But if it is a tie, the defender will win. And of course, if you have less swords than the defender have shields, well then you also lose. But you can actually sacrifice warbands from your board to get more sword results. Meaning that if you sacrifice one warband from your board, you will get one more sword in your result. If you were victorious, you get to take half the amount of warbands that was in the defense, round it down, and place them next to the board. The rest of the defender's warbands leaves the main map and goes back to the board. And then you also get to take any amount of warbands from your board and put out on the sites that you targeted. If you target any relics, you also get to take that relic. And if you also targeted their pawn, you get to move this pawn anywhere you would like to out on the map. And you also get to burn half of their favors and put them back to the main bank. If you on the other hand lost the battle, well then you of course do not get any rewards at all. And half of your warbands rounded down needs to leave the map and the board. The last main action we have is to travel, and this is really where we go out in this huge land and explore. Now, travel will cost you supply, just like the other actions did, but how much supply you need to pay, well, that is stated at the top of the region that you would like to go to. If we look at Cradle here, for example, we can see some different symbols and numbers. The first symbol here, this is the amount that you would need to pay to travel to another site in Cradle, meaning that you do not leave the region, but you leave to another site. So to move to another site in Cradle, you would need to pay 1 supply. The next one here means the amount of supply you would need to pay to move to the region on your right. So to move from Cradle to Province, you would need to pay 2 supply. And if you want to move 2 steps to the right, meaning all the way over to Hinterland, you would need to pay 4 supply. If you travel to a brand new site for the first time, you get to flip that one face up. If there is any symbol in the top corner showing favors or secrets, you get to take that amount of favor and secrets and put on that site. If there had been an R in the top left corner instead, you would have put out 1 relic face down next to that site. So that was the main actions, but like I said at the start of the video, there's also some minor actions. These will not cost you any supply at all. The first one is to flip a face down advisor up next to your board. Now you should think of these advisors kind of like cards on your hand that you can play on your turn and use the powers on them. But you can have a maximum of 3 advisors next to your board, which is also stated on your board so you won't forget it. And if you have a face down advisor here next to your board, they will still count towards your 3 advisors. Another minor power would be to play some cards and use their actions. These will cost you no supply, but some of them will cost you favors. These favors are placed on the cards to show that you have used them. Down at the bottom of the card, you can see what the action will give you for benefit. Some of them are action modifiers. In this case here, giving you the ability to move within your region to a new site without paying any supply. This one here will gain you 4 warbands when you play the card. And this one will give you 1 more die during your defense. Again, you would need to pay a favor. But the crown also means that to be able to play this card, you need to rule the site. And you rule the card even if your pawn isn't at the site with it. You rule all cards in your advisors and sites you rule. So the cards in this game basically lives out next to a site or next to your boards as advisors. And if you rule them, then you can use them for free, meaning that you do not need to spend any supply to use them. But there are some more minor actions. If you rule a site, you get to take a peek of the relic on that site. And you also get to drop on or off any warbands that you have on that site. Now, there is one more minor action in this game, and that is if you are the Chancellor, you can actually offer citizenship to the other exiles. And this is if you are starting to feel like power is slipping through your fingers. Then you might want to get some more players on your side. Now, whoever agrees on this would get one of the Chancellor relics. And now they have a new victory goal. Because they have the victory goal that is called Successor to the Chancellor. And this basically means that if the Chancellor wins and the citizen have reached their goal of successor, they will actually win the game instead. An exile that has become a citizen can, however, become an exile again. And if the Chancellor do not have the Grand Scepter anymore, well, then they cannot promote any exiles to civilians any longer. Now, the citizens do apply to a few other roles, but I feel like you should check that out by yourself when you have played around. When we have done the main phase, you go into a little rest phase, and this is basically a little cleanup phase. Now you need to take back any favors that you have placed out on cards, and these favors goes to the bank on the main map that matches the suit of that card. If you have played any secrets, however, those actually goes back to your board. Next, we need to refresh our supply. And the amount we get to refresh depends on how many war banks we have left in our personal bank, meaning next to the board. The fewer war bands we have mustered, the less we need to feed, and the more supply we will have left for ourselves. For each supply you did not use during your turn, you get to move one extra space to the left. As we can see here, we have 2 war bands left, but we have used all our supply. So we get to move our little token here up to 3 to 0 war bands. But if we had not used all our supply, we would have been able to move up to 3 to 0 plus 2, moving us up to 9 plus. And that's the way a turn looks. You go through the 3 different phases. Once you are done, the turn goes on to the next player. And this is the way the game keeps on going, until either one of the exiles manage to become Ursuper and keeps this title until their next wake phase. If this happens, when then this exile have actually won the game. But as I told you at the start of the game, the Chancellor can also win if we enter the 5th round and the Chancellor managed to roll a number 6. Or if it is the 6th round and they manage to roll a number 5. Or if it is the 7th round and they manage to roll a number 3. Or simply if we go all the way to round number 8 and the Chancellor is still the Chancellor, well then they win. But remember that if the Chancellor wins and any exiles have become citizens and they have reached the goal of successor to the Chancellor, they become the winner instead. Or if any of the exiles have managed to get a vision and have reached the requirements to win it, then that player would become the winner. There are a bunch of ways to win in this game. And there you have it, my friend. That is how you play Oath. Now, this game is quite heavy, and like I told you, there are a few rules that I haven't taken in account here, that I feel like it's better for you to just encounter them as you go along, because this is a heavy game. It's a beautiful, well-made game, but it will take you a few rounds to get a grip on what you can or cannot do, how you can actually win the game, how you can play the cards, where you can place your little pawns, but also how you get the power. There are a lot of things for the players to do here, and the replayability is enormous. During your first game, as I showed you here, the setup, you can follow it in this playbook, and you will actually go step by step in how to play the game. Now, I would still watch this video before I went into the playbook just to get a grip on how things works. but the playbook itself is actually quite well made. There's a lot of pictures, and it's really taking the player's hands and bringing them along step by step during their first game, which is needed. The quality of this game is just exquisite. You have the big neon map here in the center of the table. You have premium cards. You have wooden pawn, war bands, and tokens up here. You got the nice die. Everything in this game is just so well made and so well thought of. Also the artwork, I really like the artwork. It is cartoonish, I mean it's not realistic, but it never gets funny or childlike. It is always mean, and it got really nice details to it. The artists here have done a really good work. Also, the streamline of the game is really well made. It's really nice and easy to understand what you can or what you cannot do, what you need to pay and when you do not need to pay. It is really well stated out on the board and the cards themselves. So that was Ode for you, my friend. This game is just brilliant. I really like this game. If you are into heavy Europe games, well, check this one out. It is absolutely cool. And the cool thing about this game is that when you unwrap the game and you put it down, you actually have a little box here where you save the different locations, and whoever became the winner of the last game continues to be the Chancellor during their next game. And you can go out again and campaign, take back that crown. It's just so epic. Also, I haven't even started on all the regions yet. There's so many different sites here that you can use. Look at all of these cards. I mean, I haven't even opened these yet. There are so much things for the players to do. There's also a solo mode in this game. I don't know how this game works solo, as I haven't played it solo, but there is a big AI here that you follow in the different instructions. They will do different things out on the map. It's just so beautiful, and the quality, oh my. If you want to know more about Ode, well, check out the links down in the description, and it will bring you right to the Board Game Geek site or the main page here of Leader Games. So check that out if you want to know more about the game. If you like what I'm doing here, please hit the subscribe button. Maybe throw in a little comment there, give me a little thumbs up, or whatever feels good to you. It gives me a smile on my lips every time. Now I'm gonna go out there and play some more Ode. Peace out.